All right, everybody. Happy whatever day this is when I decide to upload this. All right, we're going to play an imagination game. I want you to imagine that you're a bank teller, assisting in withdrawals, deposits, typical bank teller stuff. And in walks a man and he fires a shotgun into the ceiling and takes you and 3 others hostage into one of the bank's vaults. Okay, now this is a very, very, very scary situation here indeed, especially when you all learn that this individual is a convicted felon already on parole. Police swarm the place where he sends a list of demands, one of them being the release of his friend and another felon to assist in his heist. During this 6-day standoff with police, a bond develops between you and the captors. They give you a jacket when you say that you're cold. They allow you to phone your family. They even allow you to walk outside of the vault attached to a 30-foot rope when you complain of claustrophobia. You all become sympathetic towards the bank robbers. After you were set free, you refused to testify against them in court, and you even raised money in their defense. Couldn't imagine that, could you? Yeah, no, me either. Well, this really happened in Stockholm, Sweden in 1973. Many medical professionals compared this to PTSD in military vets as a coping mechanism that they used to survive those days, eventually developing the term Stockholm Syndrome. Now, Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological response that causes survivors of abuse to sympathize with their abuser. It's considered a coping mechanism, like I said, and not a mental health diagnosis. But over the course of time, some victims do develop positive feelings towards their captors.
But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine.
They may even feel as if they share common goals and interests and causes.
Charlie really was an amazing person. He was we were really close. And he was my best friend and my brother.
The victim may begin to develop negative feelings toward the police or authorities in these situations. They may resent anyone who may be willing to help them escape from the dangerous situation that they're in.
What do you mean because you said so? That's not logical. I want an explanation.
So why am I telling you all of this? What does this have to do with the title that you clicked to watch? Well, I have reason to believe that the #1 host of the podcast of America, I guess, at this time, has something in common with those that were held captive. Welcome to Exposing Candace.
White versus black all over again.
Do you want to know what my expertise are? Black in America.
I do not remember when I was growing up having all of these race issues, okay?
Okay. So I want to start off by saying that my investigative series into Candace Owens is not because of her recent deep dive in her lapdog tendencies into the Kirk family, but instead how we got here. How did a woman of the minority go from winning a 5-figure discrimination lawsuit with the NAACP by her side to disowning her culture while using compliance and incompetence in the grift of empowerment? How can this woman willingly tear down an organization like Black Lives Matter when given white platforms, but turn around and willingly tear down Turning Point USA when demoted to her own platform? I smell bullshit. I did not create this video for those of you who support Candace. You are too far gone. Actually, if you want to hang out, go ahead. You might learn some things because Candace likes to omit a lot of facts about herself. So you can stay, but I didn't make this for you, okay? Instead, I made this videos for those of you who woke up thinking, am I finally agreeing with Candace Owens? The answer is no. She's finally agreeing with us, and even that is a grift. Typically, I'm a faceless channel. But this topic deserves my face, my eyes, my emotions. I'm not hiding behind a single statement that I say here, and I welcome all of the smoke, all of it. Okay, trust and believe. This video will take the journey of Candy from her birth until now. And like all of my previous deep dives, I will be putting in clips that come straight from the horse's mouth. Okay, I mean previous interviews, podcasts, magazine articles, and old Instagram posts. And all of the links of everything that I bring up will be in the link below or in my bio area so that you can go and read it on your own time, okay? So, without further ado, let's start from the beginning. Candace Amber Owens was born on April 29, 1989 in White Plains, New York, but grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. That's about an hour drive from New York, New York. She is the third of 4 children. She has 2 sisters and a brother. According to her in the Herald Mail, she grew up in poverty, living in a small apartment, but watch this.
When I was really, really young, my dad tried to just work 2 jobs. My mom was to stay at home. And those were definitely the best memories I had growing up.
Now, let's digest. Her mother was able to stay home while her dad worked 2 jobs. So poverty is an exaggeration, which is common with extremists. Poverty, by definition, is the state of being extremely poor. Now, I don't want to dispute what someone considers poor for them. I mean, even Drake has the song Started from the Bottom, and he grew up in the suburbs, which is not considered a bottom for many. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I had to throw Drake up in there. My bad, Drizzy, Sorry, all the casualties. But just because his bottom and my bottom are not the same, it does not eliminate that point in time was a bottom for him. However, each time exaggerations like this are made, they take away from those who truly do live in poverty without the luxury of staying home with their children. Some don't have a roof over their head or even a partner to go home to. Yet, Candace wants to sell us that she grew up in poverty. Bruh. Okay. I want you to keep in mind that Candace is also or would be considered a middle child. Many experts who study personality believe that your family's birth order plays a role in your development. They see middle child syndrome as the idea that you're neither the oldest nor the youngest, so you get less attention from your parents, feeling caught in the middle. But some people, on the other hand, see birth order like astrology. Something to be studied and laughed at but not taken seriously. I beg to differ. If you are a middle child, you're raising a middle child, you know a middle child, comment down below and let me know if these common traits or characteristics that I'm going to list sound familiar to you. So they can be rebellious, sociable, good at being mediators, and want fairness in situations. They may have a stronger sense of not belonging than their siblings do. So even though many can be great when working in groups, some middle children can struggle when working with others. They often feel overshadowed, are often the first siblings to move the furthest away. They are more skilled at persuasiveness and debate.
I didn't like when my mom used to say growing up, do this because I said so. Like that's something that I would instantly be pushing back at as a toddler, right? Because I'm just, what do you mean because you said so? That's not logical. I want an explanation.
They also have low self-esteem due to feeling left out, which can lead them to feel like they have to prove themselves. Now, this is important. So around 10 or 11, her parents divorced, probably because mom wouldn't get off her ass and get a job.
For us, it had to end when I was 8 years old, and it's really difficult, I think, growing up when you don't have 2 parents that are present, not because they don't want to be, but because you don't, have the money for them to, the luxury to just be able to stay home.
So she and her siblings then moved into the home of her paternal grandparents. Another privilege many people in poverty do not have. Do you know how much of a blessing it is to be able to go back home and live with your parents as a grown-ass man with children? And her grandparents somewhat became her primary guardian through her adolescent years. However, in 2007, her senior year in high school, came an experience that shaped and forever changed her personally and politically.
I do not remember when I was growing up having all of these race issues, okay? I really don't remember it.
Well, Candy, let me remind you, she can be so forgetful, guys. You'll see this. In 2007, while 17 years old, Candace received 3 racist death threat voicemail messages. The voicemails contained 2 minutes of death threats, racial slurs, and sexual epithets recorded by 3 or 4 male voices, white male classmates. In one message, the callers take turns making death threats. In another, a single racial slur is repeated over and over. Over and over. Hard R. Okay. I'll let her explain it here.
Screaming, they were sometimes laughing, they were even at certain points singing. And here are a few excerpts of some of the things that were being said to me. If there's a way to summarize it, in short, they told me that they were going to kill me. They told me things like they were going to tar and feather my family, that they were going to put a bullet in the back of my head as they had done to Martin Luther King. They told me in so many words that I better not be home. I was absolutely traumatized, and in terms of action, I didn't really do much. So that night, I simply cried, and I remember feeling incredibly confused because I couldn't think of 4 individuals, not even one individual, that wanted to see me dead. The next day at school, I confided what had happened to me to my philosophy teacher, and he was adamant. He was like, "You do not let this thing go." And he marched me into the principal's office. And when she heard the voicemails, she had an equally strong reaction, and she made the quick decision to phone the police. And that was the beginning of what would become a very dark period of my life. My face was splattered across the front page of every newspaper throughout the state of Connecticut. I also had NAACP members who I had never spoken to prior waiting on the front steps of my high school with cameras in tow to speak out on the horrors of what a Black girl was going through. My parents fought at home. My sisters got into physical altercations at school, defending me against all of the chatter that was drummed up by students and teachers alike. Because as we all know, in any of these types of situations, everyone feels a need to take a side. And maybe Candace made up the voice messages. Maybe she called herself. No one had been arrested yet. It was just an investigation. I made the decision then to start homeschooling while the investigation continued, and it concluded nearly 2 months later. It took 2 months before all of the boys involved were arrested and before I was able to return back to school, and my hashtag was allowed to shift into the societal subconscious. And then, of course, everyone forgot about my story. Everyone except for me.
But what she leaves out is that she and her father, Robert Owens Jr., filed a lawsuit against the Board of Education on May 24, 2007 in New Haven Federal Court for knowingly failing and refusing to protect her from continued harassment from students who left death threats and racial sexual slurs on her cell phone's voicemail that past spring. The family informed the school of the threats and the identity of the callers on February 5th, according to the lawsuit. Now, despite the facts above, the defendant has taken no disciplinary action, well, at that time, didn't take any disciplinary action whatsoever against any of the callers, all of whom were identified as students at Stanford High School. This is from the lawsuit. Upon information and belief, the defendant failed to act in part because one of the callers, believe this, is the son of the then Stanford mayor, Malloy. Now, Malloy confirmed in March that his son was involved in the case and he cooperated fully with the police investigation, and he made no further comments. At least one of the other students who were alleged to have left the voicemails were arrested. The 17-year-old connected with her case was arrested on March 26. That day, Owens also returned to school, accompanied by representatives from the Connecticut NAACP. Candace, however, never got a single apology from those boys. Not one sorry. She homeschooled the remainder of the year, her senior year. She couldn't face them or anyone else. She hid. With help from the NAACP and more specifically the Connecticut NAACP president, Owens' family received a settlement of $37,500 from Stanford Public Schools. Now, let's unpack. Candace was active in high school. According to her yearbook, she was in track and field, cheerleading, poetry slam, Future Business Leaders of America, or FBLA, Students Against Destructive Decisions, or SAD, Big Brother, Big Sister, and Kids in Crisis. Like, come on. What triggered these boys? Was it jealousy? Did she turn one of them down? Or was it white supremacy?
One of the kids I was like friends with, but we were arguing because he was upset that I was like spending so much time with my boyfriend.
Oh,
but I didn't.
that's
But he's gay.
I mean, through it all, she blamed her teacher, the principal, the NAACP, the media, most of all herself, but not the individuals who did the intentional act to degrade her by phone.
All of those emotions you had when you first read those messages, I'm going to politely ask you to just forget about them.
It's similar to the hostage in the robbery gone wrong I spoke of earlier. Grateful to be given a jacket because they were cold, instead of realizing they wouldn't be cold if they weren't held hostage at gunpoint. She carried this within and was homeschooled at a very critical point in her life as a senior in high school. This had to be devastating. This has to be devastating. And I speak in present tense because she still battles with the aftermath of that incident today. 9 years after the incident, she writes in the Stanford Advocate on the matter, "Do you remember me? 9 years ago, I was a senior at Stanford High School on the brink of a life-altering event." Adding, "Without my consent or involvement, political forces took sides. Within my family, lines were drawn. My father wanted to press charges. My mother just wanted to keep quiet so I can return to a normal life. And all I wanted was an apology. I wanted someone to be held accountable, admit they made a mistake, and just say sorry." In college, because of the incident, Candace isolated herself. She attended the University of Rhode Island and in this isolation picked up the accountability she never received. She took the blame for her family's trauma in this. I mean, she went through it, but let's be real, okay? Like, let's be honest here. If she lived in poverty like she claims, and they were staying with her grandfather, her father needed the money. He needed the lawsuit money. Did she resent Dad for this? She claims that within her family, lines were drawn. Did she wish he had fought in other ways?
Even though I was some $100,000 in student loan debt, I went and bought a fancy bag so I could fit in and look cool. And my grandmother, she must have known that she wasn't going to make it out of the hospital because she took time to speak to me and each of my siblings and all of my cousins individually. And the last words she said to me, the first thing she said to me was, "Candace, you need to forgive your mother." It's random. We weren't talking about my mother. We weren't talking about my upbringing. I had a tough one. And then she said, "I worry about you. I worry about you in New York City. I worry about you because you're losing yourself." And I laughed it off and I said, "Grandma, it's fine." I got on a plane. In 24 hours, she was dead.
Maybe that's why she admired her grandfather so much. Is it because every time she would show any emotion toward this trauma, he then silenced her with the trauma of his past? The constant KKK narrative she has created?
My grandfather has picked cotton, and he has also had experiences with a Democrat terrorist organization of that time, the Ku Klux Klan.
My grandfather was raised in the South, in the segregated South, in North Carolina. And one of the most fascinating things about hearing his stories, what it was like to grow up with the real Ku Klux Klan.
I learned conservatism through my grandfather. I didn't know that that was the name. I didn't know these were conservative principles. Starting his life on a sharecropping farm, working tremendously hard, 5 years old, picking cotton and laying tobacco out to dry. He started his life on a sharecropping farm in Fayetteville, North Carolina, one of 12 brothers and sisters. His first job he had when he was 5, and this was in the segregated South. And his job was to wake up before the sun came up, because in North Carolina, it would get too hot if you didn't get up before the sun. And he would lay out tobacco to dry. Never once in our household when he would share the stories of his upbringing, never once when my grandmother would share the stories of their upbringing, did they ever complain. It was just what happened. My grandfather, despite surviving attacks from the Ku Klux Klan, never once in our household said a bad word about white people. It never happened. My grandfather taught me that fear is what naturally follows love. He never raised a hand or launched an insult at me, but what I have feared most in my life is disappointing my grandfather.
It probably made her feel like she had no right to complain about a voice message, right? But what do you teach a child when you do that? That their trauma is not as bad as yours, so it's non-existent? Are you teaching them how to disrupt the systems that be, or are you teaching them compliance for survival? In survival mode, Candace felt pity on the bullies who committed the hate speech while attacking herself, developing anorexia and alcoholism.
This is a photo that was taken of me 3 years later in 2010, and I went on to lose about 10 pounds after it was taken.
An Instagram post of her cat. Yes, Candace too was an unmarried cat lady.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
She says her anorexia and drug and alcohol usage was her way of gaining control after the media's portrayal of her, but in reality, I feel that it could have been control over how she saw herself. Was it the media shining light on the situation, or was it that she had to replay that day and replay those voice messages over and over? She attended the University of Rhode Island to study journalism, but left after her junior year because of a problem with student loans. Digest that and then watch this.
That's not reporting on a lawsuit. That is stating your own personal opinion. And if you don't know the difference, it's because you're not a reporter. I am.
Well, now we've arrived at your professionality. I guess, Piers, tell me more. What school did you go to? Tell me more.
I went to Harlow Journalism College in Essex in England.
Well, then we better listen to you guys. You heard them. We got to trust the experts.
Candace Owens did not get a degree in journalism, but Candace Farmer did. Candace Farmer used her connections to complete the requirements needed for a bachelor's degree only 4 years ago in 2022. So when Piers pressed her, it struck a nerve because he was right. Telling someone who spent those 4 years or 5 years or however many years they took to get that degree that you're equal to them after taking almost a decade off, running up millions and getting married to a rich foreign guy, they would be highly offended. It's not the same. The papers may match in frame, but studies are not the same. Is the child who was homeschooled on their senior year of high school the exact same as the child who was able to physically attend and spend time with their peers? Will they have that same experience in the real world? The answer is no. We haven't even gotten to the true grift, and I'm already getting pissed off. But after she left college because she couldn't afford it, she worked as an intern for Vogue in New York, which is huge, especially at the time, but she needed the money. Again, let's be real here, okay? We don't do the fake and gay. Maybe a little gay, but no fake. So she needed a big girl job, and she got one as an administrative assistant for a private equity firm in Manhattan, and she is a dedicated individual. I am not going to take that away from her, okay? So she moved up as a vice president of that firm. Now, keep in mind, she didn't even get any professional help required, not just for the incident, but for her anorexia, for the alcoholism, at least that I'm aware of, or at least that she shared. She claims to be an open book, but very private when it comes to her personal life, Anyway.
People say, how did you get over your anorexia? Meditation, yoga. I was able to meditate myself back into health.
Enter Degree 180.
What's up, everyone? My name is Candace Owens. I'm the CEO of Degree180.com, here answering your questions.
In 2015, Owens became the CEO of Degree 180, an online publication where many of the writers were students that frequently mocked the then candidate Trump. It was a mostly Democrat platform, including conducting a mock investigation into his penis size. When BuzzFeed outed her or outed the previous discussions on Degree 180's platform, she called the reporter a despicable creature. This is common in Candace when her past is brought up, which is ironic because this woman investigates other countries' presidents having a penis or a vagina. She searched Kamala's entire family history. But if you bring up one thing from her past, you are a despicable creature. Takes one to know one, Candy. Takes one to know one. Around this time, Gamergate happened. And if you don't know what Gamergate is, have a seat. And if you do know what Gamergate is, consider this a slight refresher, I guess, or a blast from the past. One of our first impacts of misogyny online started on August 16th, 2024, when a 24-year-old male programmer, I'm not going to say his name for a reason, posted a more than 9,000 word tirade about the dissolution of his relationship, about the end of his relationship with video game developer Zoe Quinn. Now, at the time, Zoe Quinn identified as a woman. She now uses they, them pronouns, and I will address them as such. The rambling account contains screenshots of their private correspondence and accused them, among several allegations, of sleeping with a journalist for the gaming site Kotaku in exchange for a positive review. Despite there being no proof, the ex-boyfriend's rant quickly attracted the attention of online forum 4chan users, who seized on the alleged relationship between them and Kotaku writer. The events mutated into a leaderless harassment campaign known as Gamergate, eventually moving from 4chan to more mainstream social media platforms. Anonymous gamers made rape and death threats against Quinn, feminist gaming critic Anita Sarkeesian, I'm sorry if I'm butchering his names, game developer Brianna Wu, and others who advocated for a more inclusive gaming industry and released private information about them. The campaign's participants even pressured companies to stop advertising on gaming sites they viewed as critical of gamer culture. And that sentiment soon expanded beyond video games and mobilized a new generation of disaffected young men becoming politically active. How does Candace play a role in this? Now, bear with me. We're getting to the good part. Enter Social Autopsy.
Hey guys, my name is Candace Owens and I am the founder of socialautopsy.com, the first ever search database that aggregates people's social behavior and creates real profiles for them. So what we do is we attach their words to their places of employment, and anybody in the entire world can search for them. What we are doing is figuratively lifting the masks up so nobody can hide behind, Twitter handles or privatized profiles.
The age of technology and social media has slowly disintegrated individual accountability, the consequences of which are devastating.
Now, Social Autopsy was framed as an anti-bullying startup, and it launched its Kickstarter on April 12, 2016, billing itself as a way to catalog the abuses of trolls and cyberbullies into a sort of archive, making it very clear the effects that the incident her senior year in high school had on her.
I thought to myself, what a way if I can come back and create something that helps kids navigate technology, right, without ruining their lives. Like, do these kids need to be arrested for saying mean things? No, I disagree with that.
Okay, so you created Social Autopsy with the idea that it was sort of going to almost self-police some of the kids' ability to ruin themselves.
Right.
When you created this, it was basically to defend some of these kids from wrecking their lives, and schools would be able to look and maybe go, oh, you actually did have a decent track record here. You said this stupid thing, but we're not going to let that do anything.
The company was seeking $75,000 in funding, and with the hopes of launching about 150,000 profiles. Now, this is important. I want to come back to the money that she was seeking. We're going to put a pin in that. Now, the freak out about Social Autopsy was both immediate and predictable. A site that allows users to report people for entry into a database that will portray them as a troll or a cyberbully has obvious potential for all kinds of abuse. Candace switching from the left to the right all started with an email from Zoe Quinn to Owens the evening of her Kickstarter launch.
That whole scandal is built on a girl named Zoe Quinn who says that she was attacked by anonymous white men on the internet, and people were saying that that wasn't true, and she said that it was. And
if they were anonymous, how did she know their skin color?
I don't know. If you read the pieces in the media, it's fascinating, you know?
Yeah.
So I was doing an anti-bullying startup that I was really passionate about, and I got a phone call from her, and I put up basically a 3-minute video on Kickstarter teasing what we were going to do. And I said this one sentence, which was a figure of speech that I think set the alarms off. I said, what we're doing is figuratively lifting the masks up off of trolls. At the time, she was working at Twitter. She was working for Twitter for something called Crash Override Network, and I immediately received an inbox from her on Twitter saying she'd like to talk to me about and try to convince me that the project that I'm doing is bad, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So she calls me up, and I have no idea who she is. I don't know what Gamergate is. I don't know what doxing means. And she says, you have to pull your project because people actually don't want to find out who harassed them. She said, I'm a victim, but I never want to know who harassed me on the internet. Like, she was basically arguing a point that didn't make sense. If she was actually harassed on the internet, then obviously my technology would be a godsend, because they never figured out who harassed her. And I said, you know, I appreciate the phone call. This isn't really making sense to me.
Yeah.
You know?
It sounds literally the reverse of what you'd think she would have called you to say.
Absolutely. Like, she should have been on board with what I was doing. So totally appreciate the phone call, but I'm not going to pull my Kickstarter. And she started crying.
As I explained earlier, Quinn is the original victim of Gamergate. They had expressed concerns about Social Autopsy on Twitter, and soon an autopsy intern gave them Owens' personal email address. So shortly after Quinn initiated email contact, they were on the phone. It didn't go well. Owen says she found Quinn pompous and that she thought that Quinn's concerns, which vary from the potential of children getting doxxed by Social Autopsy to the threat she thought Gamergate posed against Owens herself, was well-founded. About 45 minutes after Quinn had sent her final email, Owens said that's when she started receiving racist hate mail from the main Kickstarter contact email for Social Autopsy and her own personal email.
A woman named Zoe Quinn contacted me within a few hours of us being on Kickstarter, and she basically introduced herself as ground zero of Gamergate and said that anonymous white males attacked her on the internet, and she threatened me and said, take down your Kickstarter or white males are going to come and attack you. Obviously, I refused to take down my Kickstarter. You know, I said, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm not going to just back down. And she grew hysterical and started crying and said, you're going to ruin everything, and sort of this like ominous threat. I hung up the phone with her, and within hours, I was inundated on emails by people with these obvious for Trump sort of, you know, email addresses. And they were, you know, calling me a nigger, threatening to tar and feather my family, just this really vicious, nasty attack. And it was beyond obvious to me that it was being orchestrated by her. And I made that claim on my Twitter account. I said, you know, I don't know anything about the Gamergate scandal, but I can tell you that this girl, Zoe Quinn, is no.
Owens had convinced herself that it was Quinn sending her at least some of those harassing notes. Quinn had warned her that there would be some wave of harassment, and then voila, there was a wave of harassment. So Owens used the Social Autopsy account to create her first campaign against Quinn and Harper. Owens was new to this controversy, and she's just trying to understand more about the people who criticized her, and quickly became convinced that Quinn and Harper were some sort of internet supervillains. Now, I believe she became convinced the minute that she realized speaking up against them garnered her more support than it would speaking up for them. You catching the grift? Are you catching the grift here?
Like, she was a Democrat, and then one day she realized she could make more money as a Republican.
So she lacked the full context of the Gamergate story and started reading a trove of information, which all seemed to confirm her suspicions. So Owens fell deeper. This is something that we're going to find here. The more attention that she gets, the bigger the grift becomes, okay? She was convinced that Quinn and Harper are making a lot of money by faking harassment against themselves to boost concern about the issue, and that they were worried that social autopsy will blow the cover. Now, as a result, her accidental slide into the internet obsession at a time when she could be figuring out how to address the numerous valid concerns the public have raised about her company, Owens instead focused laser-like on unraveling a conspiracy that existed in the eyes of fevered Gamergaters and men's rights activist groups. Okay? Now, let's digest this, y'all. So she watched the bullying that she suffered from the prank calls turn into posts online. So she decided to launch an additional platform called Social Autopsy, where it would take someone's information and match it to their negative posts online. So that's right, labeling them. But wait, I thought that Candace didn't like leaving permanent stigmas on people. Even though those boys left racist comments on her phone, she didn't like to call them racist. But fast forward, she now wants to out everyone like them. But what she didn't bank was the opposite of that coin. She was outed once again. She was once again reminded of who she was. When she jumped into this Gamergate business with the social autopsy without knowing everything, she was once again taking on those bullies. And so once again, she joined them, flipping the blame on those first trying to help. So I equate Quinn with the NAACP in her senior year in high school, opening doors for her while she disrespects them for public gain. Once she saw that trolling Quinn was getting social autopsy clout, she made it a mission to keep going. Because remember, do you remember that $75,000 that I told you that she needed and that we were going to put a pin in? So now we're going to bring that back. She still needed that. And if you don't believe me, if you do not believe me when I tell you that she's a grifter, right around this time, she sued her condo and former landlord for $15,000 for mold that made her sick and caused emotional distress. But the landlord countersued, claiming she simply stopped paying her $3,500 a month rent in 2016 and had to be evicted January 2017. This is the same woman preaching blacks will never succeed until we recognize that the welfare system and the public schools is the enemies. But she's living rent-free for 6 months. This is the same woman coming at AOC at 30 for not being able to rent, but she was 28 here. Just stop paying her bills. So anyway, she lost the lawsuit. She was ordered to pay $21,000. So our girl was in the hole.
And I was just working really hard to try to pay off my student loans. And this was the giant monkey on my back. Like, how am I going to actually make money and pay off these ridiculous loans? I mean, I'm 6 figures in student loan debt, and I have no idea how I'm going to pay that off with the salary that I'm making.
I need y'all to understand. She was deeply in the hole, okay? She's out there in New York, no college degree. Okay, she needs social autopsy to work. Once it didn't, she had the crowd from Gamergate and the spectacle from Gamergate, and they were mostly white, conservative men.
And then lo and behold, in 2015, this was one of the moments where Donald Trump came down the escalator.
And at the height of Trump's incoming presidency, they were also way more lucrative. So, just like that overnight, enter Red Pill Black.
I think I might be a conservative. I don't understand. I can't camera out of my wife's face. Get out of my face. Guys, it's totally fine. It's okay. I just, think a little more conservatively. But sweetheart, you're black.
In 2017, she started a YouTube channel called Red Pill Black. The purpose was to invigorate the conservatism movement among Black people in the United States. She was used as the black face for the far right. She was able to speak on all of the rhetoric that they were not socially able to say. For example, if she says Black people are lazy as a Black woman, the white conservative can bring her on his white platform and say, see, if she says it, then I can't be racist.
This joins me now. So, Candace, what do you mean by a hamster mentality with Black Americans?
Almost immediately, the views went up, and so did the outreach for her to assist with the race war. As much as she preaches that race is non-existent, she sure used it every single time she talked.
That Trump actually represents a very real opportunity for the Black community to wake up.
Plausible that racism is being used as a theme to turn Black people into single-issue voters.
Fix Black America because they stump on our issues year after year.
That it takes to call out these crooked Black Democrat politicians that have received billions.
Not just Black America, because one part of the thing is that Black Americans, the growth rate population-wise is not significant enough. So now they're bringing in a new class of voters. They're bringing in Hispanic Americans from over the border. I think for me, listen, I present a new perspective to the minority community. Down to the Black community needs new leaders. That is why I got in this. I understood that race had become a business, and they're risking everything right now, Stuart, everything.
Almost every headline she had to do with race. For a woman who hates the word victim, she sure started every speech with what happened to her in high school.
4 missed voicemails, which was really an insane thing. So I went home and I listened to the voicemails after a great night, and what I heard was something really horrific and terrifying. And when I hung up the phone, the first thing that I did was I broke down and I cried. They can't be racist. That's a heavy word. That's a really heavy word. What they were young kids that were trying out what it was like to be mean in a generation that has smartphones.
This proved as an entry point for a young white kid who already despised the Black girl at his school. If Candace can forgive them for calling her the N-word, then what's the big deal, right? As different as Candace wanted to be, she was actually incredibly stereotypically boring. Okay. What she preached broke no barriers, it didn't disrupt any systems, and said it was the most played out role in existence, the token Black girl. At the same time, Turning Point USA was in hot water. Old tweets from staff leaked, group chat text messages showed then Midwest Regional Manager Tim Prax tweeting on Mormons, Muslims, and Jews. There were like tweets on childless cat ladies and told to just avoid saying the N-word and text to speakers. Articles were being published. This was not a good look. They needed someone to help with their image toward minorities on campus, and Candace needed the money. So she was selected as Director of Urban Development of Turning Point USA on November 21st, 2017 at a MAGA rally in Rockford, Illinois. The jokes seriously write themselves. Urban development, y'all, of all roads. It's not about race, right? So why couldn't she just be a spokesperson at Turning Point USA, but no Black girl? You oversee the urbans, okay? Because you're urban. It later became president of communications. During this time, they jumped from campus to campus in the name of free thinking, but just yelled over individuals who disagreed with them. They wouldn't try to understand you if you disagree with them. Instead, they belittled you on a large platform of mostly far-right peers. They received viewership and praise from complete spectacles with very little knowledge, just huge emotional rhetoric based on disgusting stereotypes that already exist. Turning Point was so dangerous because not only were they appealing to the most impersonable audience, but they spilled over into politics. What they were saying went into the ears of real lawmakers. This man was on a phone call basis with the President of the United States of America. This man took buses to the insurrection on July 6th. This man had the Vice President of the United States speak on his podcast, Moments of Silence during national football games, and was used as a scapegoat to demolish free speech. People were fired from their jobs simply by disagreeing with any positive images of him. Candace and others like her are a cancer to the Black race, and she spreads like a plague. I will be using examples from Pillboy's recent video, How to Be a Raccoon. I will place the link to this video below. I highly recommend that you all watch this video immediately following watching this video that you're watching now. He hit on some points I have to reiterate. I have to touch on these. One thing she loves to preach is race is non-existent. Black success is possible if you follow the rules. This creates the notion that the problem is us. Prisons are full not because of over-policing, but because Black men and women are unruly. Schools don't fail because of gutted funding, but because parents don't care enough. Poverty exists not because of wage theft or housing discrimination and redlining, but because Black people are lazy. All of which radicalizes racial issues instead of solving them. Candace Owens does not disrupt the system, and this becomes elevated by the news. Racism didn't begin because we didn't know how to behave, and it won't end if we do know how to behave. I can list or talk about endless examples of individuals who lived by the book according to these people and still died by the gun, by over-policing, by police abuse or police brutality. If we act right, they'll just treat us right. It teaches oppressors we have to earn dignity. It teaches that oppression is self-inflicted, and this erases history and isolates individuals within the community. It uses shame as a political tool. It becomes cultural warfare and not just content. This rhetoric further allows corrupt institutions to continue exploitation without accountability. Candace was always tolerated when used for gain of the white supremacists around her, but as Turning Point grew, she could feel how replaceable she was, like meetings being taken without her. She's being excluded from financial gains, but she is not new to feeling Griff's shift. You know what I'm saying? She decided to gain her own security. And in December 2018, at a soft launch for Turning Point UK, she did just that. Enter George Farmer. George Thomas Style Farmer was born in London, United Kingdom, to a privileged family. He is the son of Lord Michael Farmer, a British businessman and a life peer in the House of Lords, and his mother, Jennifer Potts. Now, his father, a former treasurer of the Conservative Party, built a fortune through the metal and commodity company. This environment gave young George early exposure to business and politics and money, money. Educated at St. Paul's School in London, he later attended the University of Oxford, where he earned a degree in theology. While at Oxford, he was a member of the exclusive Bullingdon Club, an elite society known for its aristocratic ties and rowdy traditions, like in 2005 when members smashed 17 bottles of wine and a window at a pub. I'm not lying, you can look this up. Former members include two kings of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. His education and connections set the stage for his entrance into the worlds of finance and politics. He started in finance, working as a research analysis at Jigsaw Research before founding Redfield and Wilton Strategies, a global consulting firm specializing in public opinion polling. He also established Red Kite Group, a hedge fund focused on copper market investments. However, he gained significant public recognition when he became the CEO of Parler, the conservative social media platform. His leadership of the company came during a turbulent time, particularly when Kanye West attempted to buy the platform in 2022. You will hear Kanye West's name quite a few times, okay? And I'll speak about that because I'm tired of it. Okay? Stop using Kanye West. But we'll get to that. Farmer eventually stepped down as CEO in April 2023. Politically, Farmer is aligned with conservative values. He served as chairman of Turning Point UK, and he unsuccessfully ran in the European Parliament election as a Brexit party candidate for South East England. All right. So, in December 2018, at the soft launch reception for Turning Point UK, he met Candace, and just 17 days after their meeting, Farmer proposed to Owens over FaceTime while he was on a flight to South Africa.
And I called her and I just said, listen, I know this is completely crazy and we've just met, but how do you feel about getting married to me?
Just real quick. I missed the bit where there was any sort of...
There was literally nothing romantic had been said up to this point.
Okay.
I mean, literally nothing.
So I missed nothing.
We hadn't gone on a date. We had not talked about marriage or the future or anything like that.
All right.
And and she said yes.
No.
Yeah.
Come on.
She did.
That didn't happen.
Now, their engagement was kept private for a while before they made the news public in February 2019. And on August 6, 2019, they had a private wedding ceremony with just the two of them. However, their grand wedding took place on August 31st, 2019 at, of course, a Trump winery in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the couple welcomed their first child in 2021, their second child in 2022, their third child in 2023, and I believe the fourth in 2024. But the world may want to paint this as a fairy tale, but this was an opportunistic grab from both parties, okay? Now, like I stated earlier, George Farmer wanted political success and fame at the time. Candace Owens was a well-known figure in American politics already. With the British exiting from the European Union, this would be a bold but smart move in his election campaign, a way to solidify the married man narrative at home and a way to make his name known in America. And I believe his father just came out disagreeing with Candace's views, so it might be a way to his parents. You know how that goes. And he had his eye on running for the European Parliament at the time, and Candace, our girl Candy, had her eyes on the prize.
I married the person that it made the most sense for me to marry.
Which is that wallet, okay? I mean, yes, he was probably attractive to her, probably still is attractive to her. But come on, y'all. Let's be real here. You know how I feel about being real here. Like, a simple Google search will tell you George Farmer's wealth, okay? Let's get into it. Let's get into this man, all right? Millions. Good job, Candy. Good job, Candy. So his wealth is a combination of inherited fortune, of course, smart business ventures, and political engagement. So his net worth is estimated to be between $180 and $240 million, okay? A fortune built through both his own efforts and his family's legacy. So much of his wealth comes from his entrepreneur ventures, much of like the consulting firm that I spoke of, the hedge firm that I talked about, and his tenure as CEO at Parler. But it was controversial, but it still gave him $40 million annually from his real estate properties and other business investments. Okay. He inherited a 12-bedroom luxury mansion in London worth $19.5 million, along with at least 10 properties all across the UK, France, Morocco, and Belgium. Okay. In 2020, he purchased a large estate in Tennessee where he now lives with his family. That's where Candace shoots those videos, okay? Whole Tennessee was out of power recently, but she was able to keep those YouTubes coming, okay? Adding to his assets, he also owns an 8-seater private jet, which he reportedly bought at an auction. Okay. His lifestyle is luxurious, yet after losing in 2019 to the election back home, he chose to be a stay-at-home husband. And I mean, he can be. Candace runs around to preach the stay-at-home narrative to women who have to choose between milk or gas in this economy, while she can log off and hop on her private jet whenever. He maintains a relatively low profile compared to his wife's public persona, of course, by strategic design. Before he stepped down, though, he stepped up and she paraded him around conventions and public speakings, but this didn't help with Turning Point employees who were already waiting on the okay to let her go. Now, enter PragerU and Blexit.
Hey everyone, I am super excited to announce that I am rolling out a brand new podcast with PragerU, aptly entitled The Candace Owens Show.
She started thinking she was bigger than the program when it came to Turning Point. She started thinking she was equal to them. So in 2019, she was fired. I mean, she stepped down from Turning Point. Now, she went on to post first this very kind and almost uplifting post about her exit, saying, I am both excited and sad to announce that I will be officially moving on from my role as communication director for Turning Point USA. Now, she wrote this on an Instagram post that is, of course, deleted on May 1st, 2019. My dream has always been simple: to wake up Black America, to turn the lights on within a community that has been used and abused by the Democrat Party for decades. She continued, with the Blexit movement, the Candace Owens podcast, and my upcoming book, I no longer feel I can be a dedicated communications director to an organization that is rightfully growing rapidly. However, Turning Point released a separate statement. There have been calls for Owens to leave Turning Point USA for months. Back in February of that year, Turning Point USA campus chapters at the University of Nebraska, Bowling Green State University, and the University of Colorado were demanding that Owens be fired or resign. Their statement reads, Turning Point USA is above this thoughtless and divisive rhetoric, and as chapters, presidents, and leaders of Turning Point USA, we will no longer stand idly by as they continue. We do not believe Candace Owens to be the most effective representation for Turning Point USA as communications director or otherwise. We have seen many hardworking activists in chapters across the United States disassociate with Turning Point USA simply because they can't align themselves with the rhetoric and statements that have come out. The statement read in part. The statement also said that as the communications director, she must know how to communicate professionally and effectively. This was all after the Hitler comments. No issues when she spoke negatively on the Black and brown, but the Jewish. You would think this would be her wake-up call, but, grifters have to grift. So let's circle back to PragerU and Blexit. From 2019 to 2021, she hosted the Candace Owens Show on PragerU, where she mostly spoke about, you guessed it, race in America. Then Blexit, Black Exit, originally founded in 2016, but co-opted and stolen by Candace in 2018, where she again used race to spark controversial rhetoric, rejecting a victimhood mentality from a girl who used her victim story to tell you this.
The only way that we are going to move forward as a country if we all come together.
Candace and the Blexit movement is like the civil rights movement in its own way. I think Candace Owens belongs. I think when history is done and it's written itself for her, she is going to be in the category of Martin Luther King Jr. and so many greats that came before us.
Okay, promoting entrepreneurship as she relaxed on her and her husband's millions and recruiting black voters to conservative causes. Since at least 2013 to 2025, the Blexit has conducted Educate to Liberate tours aimed at HBCU homecomings and organized live events and outreach through Turning Point USA's infrastructure. Now, these activities prompted pushback from several universities that said representatives showed up without permits or were removed, and from critics who view the tours as recruitment for a partisan conservative agenda, which is true. She was fading into the background with these roles and needed that push to get her into bigger spaces. In the background, though, admiring and waiting for his chance at it all, was Ben Shapiro. Enter the Daily Wire.
Hey, turn your body that way just a little bit more.
People spend so much time hating me.
You're saying
what are you
here.
saying right
so
now?
what?
The media has done a really good job of creating a caricature of Candace Owens. I'm always on the defense. I'm angry. I'm upset. And that just couldn't be further from the truth.
Play with that dress a bit right there. Yeah.
I'm a wife, a mother, a friend, a sister, and that has been completely, I think, stripped away in this age of media propaganda and building people as either good guys or bad guys.
Hey,
Gonna be a
how are
long
you?
day.
You ready? Yes. Hi.
People that work with me, they are always so surprised that I have a sense of humor. I'm always laughing. I have a great time. I don't think you can get through life unless you have a sense of humor.
I heard you offered to do your own hair and makeup.
Yeah, I not makeup. So I think the timing right now is really crucial to stand up on a platform and to say, I'm here, I'm a conservative, I'm not apologizing.
You see, our girl Candy got the money on for that makeup and that hair and the budget and was a prominent on-air host at the Daily Wire in 2021. Her program, titled Candace, was a weekly political show produced for the site. There was a live audience at times, and she was her usual controversial self. But the difference was Shapiro. You see, Ben, he was those high school boys who bullied her, but this was like more so face-to-face. Ben enjoyed the large crowds and attention Charlie was receiving with Turning Point and couldn't wait to get Candace. So he upped the budget and added extra theatrics, but Candace was on thin ice. She was on thin ice from the very beginning. Now, the war in Gaza created a divide that was already there. After already flirting with anti-Semitism and associated with those accused of it with the Hitler comments. Meanwhile, Shapiro went to Auschwitz on an educational trip. But see, Owens saw what happened with her in Turning Point. They turned. So she was feeling the shift. So she has to stick to the grift. Okay, don't get me wrong. I definitely agree wholeheartedly with her statements in stating that what happened and what is happening in Gaza is a genocide. But Candace only dug her heels in when things were becoming tense at work. Calling Israel's action in the Gaza Strip a genocide was a term gained increasingly amongst progressive opponents of Israel. Ben tweeted, Candace, if you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means, quit. Shapiro wrote on the November 15, 2023, after Owens posted an extended quotation of the New Testament, beginning, blessed are the peacemakers. Her post concluded with another New Testament quotation saying, you cannot serve both God and money. And on March 22nd, 2024, the Daily Wire CEO, Jeremy, announced on X that Owens and the right-wing news site had ended their relationship. His post was shared by both Shapiro and Owens, who later added, the rumors are true. I'm finally free. Dave Rubin, another Jewish right-wing commentator who was close with both Owens and Shapiro, said it was very obvious that this was not going to end well. If you know Candace, she kind of likes these fights. What? Candace likes drama? No way! Starting support and opposition of Jews on a Jewish platform should be accepted. Candace is not used to people sticking to their word and not flip-flopping based on what's popular. Some people are true bigots. Some people are true monsters. They don't pretend for a check. So, out on her own, she used the Daily Wire separation to keep her afloat. But once people were over that, the Candace podcast jumped from theory to theory. It was basically a gossip channel where she spit right-wing manosphere X topics on YouTube. Topics range from what really happened on 9/11 and, of course, Democrat hate because she was still a MAGA grifter, and attacks on black stereotypical bullshit like Sexy Red, which is funny to me because every single time she was trying to reach out to conservative groups who were mostly white, she used stereotypical black rhetoric to gain their attention. Notice that her home life got progressively worse the further up she got.
When I was really, really young, my dad tried to just work 2 jobs. My mom was to stay at home. And those were definitely the best memories I had growing up.
We had the exterminator coming into our apartment when I was a little girl to get rid of the roaches every week because we lived in a low-income housing structure.
Here on her podcast, Candace learned the algorithm of power of a rage baiter. Now, this is similar to what she did with Real Pit Black, but this had more notoriety. When people interact, whether good or bad, it clicks, which generates clips that generate income. And with this came books, merchandise, and whatever person was willing to grift with her as guests and vice versa. And then it happened.
I just started getting word just a couple of moments ago that Charlie Kirk has been shot.
Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10, 2025, and the next day she dropped a video. And since then, she has not stopped. She has dropped over 100 videos, averaging over 2 million views per episode, shifting blame and narrative on his murder and assassination to keep this new audience engaged. Who is this new audience, you may ask? She says not Republican or Democrat or black or white, but instead truth seekers. She has developed a cult that believes they are truth seekers. The truth is, we have an incompetent nut job running the FBI who completely fumbled this entire investigation, allowing room for speculation within the people. Candace dove into every rumor, chasing people in maroon colors, chasing after eyewitnesses, sending DMs to Instagram's regular civilians, tracking airplanes, recollecting stories from a dead man that we cannot fact check, and attacking every person she worked alongside for deeper issues than she's willing to admit. Here are the facts. Before Charlie passed, she was not speaking with him on a regular basis. She doesn't know what happened the night before he passed. All of the facts she has received have come from disgruntled employees and individuals dying for a shout out on one of the top podcasts right now. Like this text, for example. It proves that he was losing Israel's support financially for having Tucker on and wanting to bring Candace, but this was a move to further stick it to Israel's funding, not because of Candace. She was hired for Turning Point in the first place to turn people away from their racist rhetoric by being the face of it. She was always the pawn in front of crowds he disagreed with. Cult leaders often try to develop a sense of family with their followers, like I noticed she does with her podcast. We did this. I couldn't do this without all of you. I promised to always be open and honest, but she refused to look at Erica as a suspect in the very beginning when she was suspect from the very beginning, and then turned around and met with her with no cameras, and this is after refusing to meet with Turning Point with cameras. Can you truly believe what she tells you that they spoke about? Maybe they agreed to keep this going for the both of them. Did you think about that? Maybe they leaked the calls to her that she's actually posting so she could surprisingly drop them in her videos. How did she get the footage of Charlie getting shot from behind? Do you all truly believe that this woman wouldn't lie to you after all of the lies that she's already given? Let me give you some scary facts. In 2026, this year, approximately 34% of the U.S. is illiterate. 54% are reading below 6th grade level. And this is costing the U.S. $2.2 trillion annually in productivity and opportunities. With numbers like this, I know over half of her fan base are not fact-checking what she's saying because more than half of the U.S. can't read. Candace is successful because we as a whole are not, okay? But no. Let us focus on the fact that the government could possibly be lying to us all about the assassination of a man, as if black people haven't been telling y'all this forever, as if we haven't been telling y'all for years that the government covers up murders. This is the woman who went out of her way to dismiss the murder of a black man, also caught on camera, but now wants us all to be on equal standing ground when it happens to her white master. Listen to me. Candace is not releasing anything helpful to us. Okay, you find out that the government is lying, just like you all found out about your savior of a president being a piece of shit, like we've been saying, and then what? What are y'all gonna do? March? You're not angry enough. You've never been angry enough, okay? So cut the fake outrage. This woman has the contact information for every individual she speaks negatively against, and still no debate. Where's the debate with Ben Shapiro? Where's the debate with Turning Point USA? Of course there's no debate, because then what would she talk about? The trial? What about her own damn trial? Okay, what about Brigitte milking her dry with this lawsuit? She's continuing to drag it out of strategy. See, tokens get spent. And now that she is double backing on her previous stance again, even her great leader, Trump, has called her out. She devoted years of her life putting him where he is, and he basically said a white man looks better than her. Okay, so what do I want out of this video? I want my black brothers and sisters to remember that accountability is important. Yes, you are allowed to change your mind. Yes, you are allowed to double back on what you've previously said. But when people disrespect us, even if they are us, there must be an apology as loud as the disrespect. She can't just undo years of slander toward her own race because she saw these people aren't afraid to execute their own firsthand. I want her supporters to touch grass. Keep your kids in school. Teach them the truth and not to listen to people who don't love themselves. Tell them to always be proud of who they are and to never sell their soul. Not for money, not for feelings, not for people, because in the end, the casket only fits one. And Charlie should have taught you all one thing: repentance. Because just like that bullet, life comes at you fast.
Craziest things that people say about me all the time, and it drives me crazy because it's literally made up. They're like, Candace said racism doesn't exist.
Who came before Trump?
Right, it was Obama, and Obama did a lot to tear this country apart. I do not remember when I was growing up having all of these race issues, okay? I really don't remember it. And then suddenly towards the end of Obama, we started hearing all of this rhetoric drummed up. It became white versus black all over again. And I say all over again, I shouldn't even say that, because when I was alive, this was not an issue. They can't be racist. That's a heavy word. That's a really heavy word. Talked about at length, but, you know, essentially I had this situation happen to me in high school where a somebody that I was actually best friends with left me horrific voicemails. They were racist voicemails. There's no other way to slice it.
And I'm not even a registered Republican. So I'm still someone that could vote Democrat. I've never in my entire life, actually, if they had called me or tried to do the right thing, I've never in my entire life voted Republican.
Before Charlie Kirk died, Charlie informed people at Turning Point, as well as Jewish donors and a rabbi, that he had no choice but to abandon the pro-Israel cause outright, okay? Charlie was done. He said it explicitly, that he refused to be bullied anymore by the Jewish donors. Can you guys answer? Did he express that? Did he also express that he wanted to bring me, Candace Owens, back because he was standing up for himself? And then did he, just 48 hours later, conveniently catch a bullet?
I think President Trump represents the first opportunity for Black Americans to get off of what I refer to as the ideological slave ship, to step outside of this lie and this myth and this illusion, and to understand that we've had our power essentially stripped from us, and we continue to allow that by being afraid of racism, which is no longer an actual threat in this society for Black Americans.
And let's now address the words on the cover of the magazine, which to a lot of people sounded oddly racist, honestly. This particular portion accusing me of using rich white men. Candace Owens lies, 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 and uses rich white men.